Hello and welcome to Antique Needleworkers. I'm Shellie and this is my channel about cross stitch and all my crafty endeavors. I thank you so much for joining me here today. If this is your first time here, thank you so much for joining me. And if you're a longtime subscriber, I just appreciate your return support. Well, hello friends. I have come here today, not for a regular floss tube. I came today to do a little tutorial. Since I saw you last, I've had quite a few contacts about could I demonstrate the pin stitch. And so I thought, you know what, let's just get the hoop out and throw some linen in it and some Aida, and let's go over a few things, and hopefully I'll be able to teach you a few things. Maybe you know them, maybe you don't. I don't claim to be a professional, but I will show you what I know and how I do things. They are just my own practices, but you know, friends, I'm just so willing to show you anything I know. I definitely will be showing you on both linen and Aida. That way each ground fabrics get covered. I know that some stitchers prefer Aida and some prefer linen, so I will show each and everything on both. I will show you today the pin stitch, and then I will show you an away knot and a waist away knot and tell you the differences in them. And you know, maybe you'll pick up something you didn't know before. And I had told in the past that I would show you how I stitch most of the time, and so I will do that. And hopefully today I'll demystify some things or maybe give you a few tips. So with that being said, I'm going to take the camera and go over to the table. I have my hoop set up, so let's get going, friends.
Okay, friends, here we are. We're at the hoop. What I'm going to tell you first is a little lesson about, I've cut my thread for myself. I'm going to sit this right here. I want to teach you a little about the way that linen is made, because it's kind of important in choosing your thread that you're going to come up next to when you're stitching. When linen is woven, there are threads that are vertically placed on two beams in the front and the back of a weaving loom. And those are what the weft, the horizontal threads, are woven over. So this is warp and this is weft. Okay, you want to find a vertical thread when you are getting ready to do your very first stitches, because you want to come up next to an up thread. Let me pull you in closer and show you that. Okay, so this thread right here is an over thread. You see, it was this warp thread was over top of the weft. Okay, let me bring you in even tighter. But this thread is an under thread. Do you see that? Okay, we want to come up and make this our left corner. Does that make sense? Because now you can really see that over thread and how the other one was under. We're not going to be working on our pin stitch out of this corner. We are going to go to the center. But I wanted to explain to you about the warp and the weft. You can very clearly see with my finger there where the thread, the vertical thread, is over or under, over or under, over or under. Do you see that? So we want to make sure that we identify our over thread right here. Oh, wait a minute. You can't see it. Where am I at? Let me bring it down into the camera space. Sorry about that. This would be the corner of an over thread. So this is the bottom left corner. Okay, now remember that. I'm going to take you out. I'm going to show you something else real quick. Okay, so I've cut my length of thread. I'm going to give it a little wax, run it over one end of it, run it over the other end of it, and I'm going to pull my fingers across it, and it's good and smooth. I'm going to teach you a little trick. Kimberly from Sassy Jacks taught me this years ago. You take the eye of your needle and you lay it on your thread that you've laid on your finger, and when you pull it, hold on just a second. When you pull it, a little loop gets formed and it pulls through the eye of your needle. Isn't that very cool? And now my thread is on my needle. You want to see that again, just in case you didn't understand? I'm going to wrap my thread around my finger. And then I'm going to take the eye of my needle so I can see my thread through it. I'm going to let the thread go, and I'm going to pull it down, and there you go. That is the old-fashioned, old-time needleworker way of threading your needle. Isn't that cool? You learned something today, a little more than that. Okay, so let's go down here, and we see that this right here is the corner. To make a pin stitch, I'm going to go to the middle, and I'm going to bring my thread down, and I'm going to leave a tail, and I'm going to hold it right there. And then I'm going to come up through the bottom left corner like this, and I'm going to pull my thread up and through. And then I'm going to drop down right through the ply of that center, and I'm going to, do you see that? And now I've gone through that. Now I'm going to come up through the top corner, and then I'm going to drop my needle back down through splitting that ply. Now, I'm going to come up through my bottom left corner here real quick. Nope, I came through the middle. Excuse me. Let me go back down one thread. There we go. Now I'm in the corner. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pair of scissors, and I'm going to hold up this middle thread really quick, and I'm going to snip it really close. Okay, you're tied on now. And then all you have to do is 1, 2, 3. And just start to stitch. Oops, I unthreaded my needle. Let's rethread the needle. You're going to get a third shot with this. Oh, I didn't take it enough through. Okay, sorry about that. So, and just begin to stitch. And your thread is absolutely as secure as can be in that first stitch, because you've pinned it down on the first leg of the stitch in the very beginning when you did the first stitch. Okay, now I'm going to bring my thread up, and I'm going to cut it, and let's go and let's talk about, okay, so that is how you tie on a pin stitch. Let's say you want to go off into left field. Let's say you have a whole bunch of stuff here, and then right over here you want to do this one single stitch. Let me show you how to do, like, you know, there's always that one single stitch that looks like maybe a snowflake or some type of, you know, embellishment. How do you do just one single stitch? Okay, let's come right here. And let's begin the stitch. So we're going to pin stitch on. I've got a camera around my neck, guys, so I'm sorry if I look a little fiddly. This is about take number 75 because it's like, how can I get this? Okay, and then down back through the center. Bring your thread up here so that you can put it on your needle minder. Okay, so I pin stitched on. Okay, look how beautiful. All the way on there, nice and secure. It's going to be this one little stitch way off in left field all by itself. Oops, let me clean that up. But how do you secure it off? Well, let me show you. We're going to come to the middle stitch. You know this little booger right here. I threw him away. He stuck around. Okay, so I've come to the right side of the stitch, and I came up through the middle hole. Let me see if I can't get you closer. Okay, I came up through the middle hole. So now I'm going to drop down into the top of the stitch, the right hand side of the stitch. I'm going to come back up through the center of the stitch, and then I'm going to go down through the top of the bottom right corner, and then watch this. Come up through the center again, just like that. Hold your thread up, keep it taut, and then snip it off. And would you look at that? Now you have a single stitch and you have pin stitched on and off onto your linen. There's a single solitary stitch right there all by itself. Well, what about an away knot? How do you do an away knot? Let me pull this thread down and through here so it's not in your way and distracting. Okay. All right. See, now look how clean that is. You pin stitched on, you stitched across. You pin stitched on, and then you pin stitched off. What are other ways to begin your stitching? Well, I'm going to show you how to do a quilter's knot. You take and you hold that right there and you go 1, 2, 3. And then you hold it like that and pull that up and through, and voila, you've got a knot. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to drop my needle. This is an away knot. Why do you use an away knot? Well, if you go right there, but you want to start stitching right here in the same line, you're putting it in the same line to where you're going, and then you start stitching, then what you've done is you've created a way to stitch over top of your tail and be sure it's there and not have to worry about checking the back or anything like that. You just start your stitching and you're covering your tail at the same time. I'm stitching through a camera lens, so excuse my fumbliness. I have tried and tried and tried to do this. Filming this in real time is not easy. But I wanted to get this done for you. So that is the purpose of the away knot. And so you stitch across it, you run your thread back through, you snip this here, you snip that there, and you've got secure tails. Okay, now there's one more type of knot, and it's called a waist away knot. Let me get another piece of thread here. And I will wax that thing. I'm just prepping that thread. Now, let's just say the waist away knot, I'm just going to tell you that some stitchers call it the lazy man's knot, or some people feel it makes for lazy stitchers. It doesn't matter. We're all going to do our own thing. All we're trying to do is make sure that our thread is secure. So listen, you do you. A waist away, you take it way over. Now, what would I use a waist away for instead of just being in line? Let's say right here I was going to do a big body of grass. Well, you know, you may waste a little thread, but I can just come right down here and start stitching, just like with my away knot. Sorry, guys. Like I said, I'm stitching through the camera lens, and that is the trickiest thing I've ever done in my life, is stitching through a camera lens. But so anyway, as you do this, you see, your tail's going to get covered, and it's up there and away. It doesn't matter if it's in line. It'll eventually get caught. Let's just say, like I said, let's just say this was going to be a big body of grass. So you know that thread's going to get covered right there. So that is the point of a waist away knot. So now while I'm here, I'm going to show you something that a lot of you have wanted to see. And that is, I'm going to show you, this is me stitching two-handed, but let me show you something. I'm going to loosen up this linen a little bit, and give it a little body. I stick my finger underneath there, and this is how Shellie really stitches, especially if I'm going left. I put my finger, see how loose my linen is? It's not tight. And this is the sewing method. Now this is the way I do the sewing method. I'm going to show you on my way back how a lot of people do the sewing method their way. I know Lori Brecklin from Not Forgotten Farms, she stitches like me, exactly like me. And she has even showed that on a video. Oops, I unthreaded my needle. Okay, let me rethread my needle. Okay, so see, I'm loosey-goosey because it's not about drum tightness. It's making my fabric work with me. Okay, so let me do one more stitch across. Okay, so that's me working left. Now, how would I handle, because you can't do like that to go right. Well, to be honest with you, if I'm not in my hoop frame like this and I am in my hoop, I just flip and stitch upside down. And I'm always going left, always going left. And that is more often than not. But if I needed to go right, then this is the way most people stitch the sewing method. They go half stitches. So you just go down. I know that Kitten Stitcher is she's a sewing method girl, and she's done a tutorial, and this is how she does the sewing method, and it's just half stitches all the way across, and then half stitches all the way back. So if I was going to, let's say I'm going to turn around and go back, then you just go like that. And that's on linen or on Aida. Oh, I'm one thread down. There we go. Do you see how I'm doing that? Isn't that cool? And it makes for some rocking and rolling. Now, I can sewing method on anything. I can do the sewing method all the way up to 46 count. I cannot do that on 56 count. So I will, do two-handed stitching. I'll make sure that my 56 count gets put in a hoop so that I can two-handed stitch. And so, two-handed stitching is just like this. You run it down with your, so it depends on what your predominant hand is. I keep my left hand underneath, and you just stitch two-handed. You see that? I have had thousands, for real, thousands and thousands of requests. Shellie, show me how you stitch. And, if I'm going right, I tend to be a full stitch chick. So I will two-handed if I'm in a frame to go right. And then I do my version of the sewing method going left. Oop, I unthreaded again. I'm learning something new. Filming and stitching. Woo! It's real, people. This is not, but I am happy to do it. Let me pull that through, and then again, I'll show you. Now, when I am doing mine, I am not going right. I go from bottom left to top right, out top left. And when I am doing this sewing method, the way I do it, I tightened back down my fabric a little bit. But hopefully you can see what I'm talking about, how I do that. And everything's on the top. We call it the sewing method or stitching on the top, because we're not poking and stabbing, going back and forth. And you know what? If you stick and stab, that's your mode of doing it. If you do the sewing method and you do half stitches, that's your way of doing it. If you do it like me, where I like to go from right to left. And I learned the sewing method because I needle pointed, and this is a needle point trick. And so, I learned that and it stuck. And so, like I said, it's just my way of doing things. You figure out what works for you. And see, look at that. And the same. So if I'm in a frame, I two-hand it from left to right, but I sewing method it from right to left. But if I'm in the hoop in my lap, I flip the thing over and stitch upside down. So I'm always going from right to left. That's my way of doing things. And like I said, Lori Bracklin from Not Forgotten Farms, she stitches that way too. So today, what did we learn? We learned to cast on and do a pin stitch and stitch across. Let me pull you closer. We did a cast on and a cast off in a pin stitch. We did a away knot, and then we did a waist away knot. Now at the end, I pulled this one up here through. Let me take you back out a little bit. So like this right here, so how do you finish this off? Well, you run your tail under those, and then you pull this up and you just snip it away. And the same with this one, you just snip it away and then go on the back and trim up your threads. And so that is the way that I do a pin stitch. That's the way I cast on and stitch. That's the way I can do one single solitary stitch, an away knot, a waist away knot, and that is the way that I sew the sewing method. Now, welcome back. Let's do that all the same thing on Aida for our Aida stitchers, because they need to know how to do. Oops, I've got a runaway thread. Whoops. There we go. Okay, let's wax that thread. Isn't this pretty? I love pretty waxers. I always use the bottom and not the top and work it that way up, because that way it keeps the top really pretty. It'd help if I turned that eye right where it needed to go. Okay. Okay. Now we're all threaded on. All right, let's talk a little bit about Aida and the composition of Aida. Let me pull you in really tight. Aida is comprised of 4 compressed threads. All right, I've got you in too tight and I'm having a hard time seeing myself. Well, let me try to take you back. Okay. All right, here you go. If you can see this Aida, it is comprised of 4 threads. 4 going in the warp, 4 going in the weft. Right and left holes in the 4 corners. That makes it so easy. Okay. Let me get an adjustment here. Okay, let me find where I'm going to be at. Okay, now let's talk about doing the same thing on Aida. The difference is we're going to have to kind of look right here and try to bust through the center of that square between those 4 threads. I'm going to hold that right there, and then I'm going to come up through my corner. Then I'm going to move that away, and then I'm going to break through the center again. See, all of this same technique can be done on both ground fabrics. Does that make sense? Then I'm going to break through the ply again, and then I'll come up through my right hand bottom corner. And that is how we will, oops, I dropped the thread again. Okay, so we're tied on to make the beginnings of our, that's our pin stitch. Okay, so we've pin stitched on. And then let's just stitch a couple stitches. You see, you can do a pin stitch on Aida just as well as you can on a linen. And you can use 1 thread, 2 threads. And I'm just stitching across, just like I did on the linen. Okay? So that is how you stitch on. Now, let me trim. This is not how you would trim off. I'm just stopping what I'm doing. Okay, so there is how we pin stitched on, and then you would cut your thread in the back and run it underneath your stitches. Now, let me come out here and do an independent stitch. That would be where I would pin stitch on and pin stitch off. I'm going to come right here, and I'm going to try to get in the center of those four, well, let me go to this one, those 4 stitches, those 4 threads in the Aida. Come down, come up, and then go back down through, and we're going to we're going to go through the ply of that, and then I'm going to go back down through there. Okay, so now I'm tied on. So let me come up through my bottom right corner, and I'll sit my needle down, and then I'm going to trim this off, and then I'm going to go ahead and go back down. And let's say this is going to be a singular stitch. Same thing. We're going to come up between those 4 threads in the center of the right hand side or the left side, however you choose to do it. Go through the top, come up through the center again, then go down through the bottom right hand corner, and then I will come up through the center again to finish my pin stitch. I'm gonna, whoops, that tail. Then I'm gonna come right here and trim it really close, and there you go, voila. There is your pin stitch on your Aida. It's the same thing as if you were stitching on linen. You just use and work, let me show you. You work with the 4 threads. You're working in there. I'm a little fuzzy. Let me back it out. Okay, like I said, the cube, there are 4 threads that go vertically and horizontally. And you try to find the very center of it and break through it and go through the center. Does that make sense? Okay, so and then the same with a waist away. I will just do a waist knot for you because it's the same thing as it was with linen. And you come down the same line. And oops, wait a minute, I'm not in the exact center. There we go. And then it's just, you just come down the row. And that is how you do that. And you just keep stitching towards your knot and then snip your knot off. And then again, I will show you how I stitch. I gotta loosen this up a little bit because I gotta have my linen or Aida loose. Okay, and then let me bring this down here. And if I was going to do the half C method, I would just do it just like this. Half stitch. half stitch, half stitch, half stitch, and then back. That is how you do the sewing method. And oops, I unthreaded my thread. Sorry about that. There's a lot going on here with the filming. So, oh my goodness. And my thread is not cooperating. I'm trying to do this and get it all on camera. Okay. And then that is how you do the sewing method. Okay.
Well, friends, I hope that that was helpful and that you learned something today and you got a few more skills in your bag. And you also finally got to see me stitch the way that I stitch. And I know that that's been something that's been requested often. And so anyway, you should be confident now in your pin stitch, and you've got a way to do an away knot and a waist away knot to get over your tail, and you've got a few more skills in your bag. So until I meet you again, I wish you many happy stitches. Bye-bye now.